Hey guys, welcome back. So now with getting into part 3 or issue 3 of King in Black, there are all kind of things that are flying under and over the radar that I want to talk about right now. So let's get right into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squad up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so first thing I want to mention, like before, I would kind of blend what's going on with Venom, also with King in Black, which is something I'll do time to time when the main story or the main event just completely absorbs what's happening within a tie-in. But in this case, I want to separate the two again so we can talk about Venom and what's going on with Eddie Brock. Because in that case, I really want to talk about in a separate video, like the afterlife that Donny Cates has established for people who die and enter into the void, whether or not they were bonded with a symbiote. Because I really want to do a comparison of what we've seen with Eddie, and also what we had seen with Cletus Cassidy, who had died minutes after childbirth, and with doing so he was selected by Knull, which in that case was very much likely with him being a descendant of the serial killer Cortland Cassidy. And so, needless to say, there's a lot that I want to get to in a separate video. And aside from that, like from here, after we had seen Eddie die, both his and Dylan's story, they've kind of gone in their own directions for a little while. So for that reason, for the time being, I'm gonna try not to compress too much into one video, because there's already so much happening in one issue, and I am loving all of it. But when we jump in, we get this monologue with someone who's moving at the speed of light, heading towards Earth and acknowledging like this path of darkness throughout space that Knull has left in his wake, which about a month ago we had got a glimpse of during Web of Venom Empyre's End. And I really wish, by the way, that Empyre's End was an event within itself. Like if we had an event within itself that was the end of Empyre, just focused on the end of that event, with Knull just mowing through the universe, like that would have been incredible. And I think a lot of people would have enjoyed that, rather than what we got, which was essentially Pike Nursery kills the Marvel Universe. But after seeing our light speed perspective from our mysterious traveler, we then go down to the ground level on Earth, where we see the heroes that are left doing what they can, with Sue Richards fighting back to back with Blade, and also the vampires who had joined with Blade because the symbiotes have been taking all their food. But also at this time, we see that Reed Richards has discovered a drive which he had gotten from Eddie, which Eddie had then gotten from Wraith. And for those who don't know what this is, I got a link below to where I did a video on Wraith and his entire history heading into King in Black, because in the portion of that video when we got into Web of Venom Wraith, it was then where we began to understand like the technology on this drive, which was created by Wraith's father, Simdell. It essentially was a blueprint for a power source that could light up an entire galaxy that was later then weaponized towards Knull. And right now, Reed is staring at the symbol of the God of Light and he doesn't even know it. And there's a lot of potential of where this could go, especially with Reed and what he could do with this. But at this moment, he doesn't really understand because the information on the drive is still encrypted. But at this point, with Reed rounding up the rest of the heroes on the comms and letting them know like the updated plan with escorting Dylan out, with them recently discovering that he can unbond others from symbiotes and otherwise possibly contribute substantially in what seems to be a hopeless situation. And right away, like Reed lets Charles know like, hey, if this doesn't work, Krakoa gonna have to step up. And Charles like more or less, yeah, we'll keep the line open. But then also like in the case of Dylan, who's still mourning his father's death, Peter more or less lets him know like, hey kid, like if you don't want to go out there, I will totally support you either way, which is huge from Peter because he loves Dylan like he's his own. But at this point with Dylan, who's going through the phases of grief, he's like, nah, I need to hurt something. Like he wants to get out there. And so when they get out there, they follow the plan by the book, because you got Spider-Man, the Invisible Woman, Wolverine, they're staggering everyone who's in the way so Dylan can blast the symbiotes off of them. And one of the first things I'm thinking is like, man, this method is gonna take a long time to like cover the world. Like I hope they got some children's Red Bull for this kid. But like even with that being the case, like they're doing the best for what they have available. And at this point, with the survival of humanity being pinned against the wall, you just kind of got to do what you got to do. But also while they're out here, they run into your symbiote Captain America, and he throws his shield at Dylan, and Dylan straight up goes Winter Soldier on him and catches the shield. And when this happened, I immediately heard like the Winter Soldier theme music from Captain America Winter Soldier. Like that, yeah, boom. Like I immediately heard that in my mind. But also I think it's kind of crazy because when somebody usually catches Cap's shield or they break Cap's shield, like it's usually done as a symbol of the tides turning. And in most cases, like Fear itself, it's a symbol of the tides turning in a bad direction. Almost like seeing Superman's torn cape flying in the wind, like it's a symbol of hopelessness. But with Dylan catching Cap's shield here, instead it's quite the opposite, because it's a symbol of hope. And when he does, he speaks to Knull like we've seen before, and he tells him like, I know you're connected, like he knows he can hear him, but also he tells him like, I hope you feel this and I hope it hurts. And when Dylan strikes the symbiote freeing Cap, we see this light show up, which also comes from the source of Dylan's power, but when this happens it burns Knull. But then also as a consequence, this told Knull exactly where Dylan was, which got Dylan snatched up, but then immediately after, lightning just struck through Knull's hand, which was kind of puppeting the hand that physically grabbed Dylan, but on Knull's physical hand, like, it left a hole straight through. And quickly we come to find out that this was Thor, who we knew because of the lightning, but nonetheless, Thor makes a great entrance anytime. And I think he kind of knows it too. Like, he's Thor, god of entrances. Like, Thor, all Thor needs at this point is like a DJ. Like, when Thor steps in, just set out the horns, like the bam 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 bam. Because it's rare when Thor shows up and it's not like a moment. But immediately when he steps in and him and Dylan are like back to back, he then takes the stagger position, hitting everyone with lightning, while Dylan separates each of the hosts from their symbiotes. But even when this is happening, the Traveler's narration comes back, and in a way kind of letting us know that Thor wasn't the person who we had seen rushing in at the speed of light. But on Earth, with Knull seeing Dylan and Thor going back to back, he then drops in with his supervillain landing, and like the eerie slouch that Stegman gives him is like so sick. But when Knull drops down here to tend to this himself, he starts to get the speech of how he's the god of the void and king of the abyss, and Thor just kind of cuts him off like silent, which is more disrespectful than telling somebody to shut up in my opinion. But with Thor going up against Knull here, it kind of plays out how I expected, because even with as powerful as Thor is, being the new Allfather, he still more or less has a level of mortality, versus Knull on the other hand, who's a being of balance, which makes him not the kind of thing that you kill. And even though Thor mentions that he's ended many of gods like him who said that they're the end all be all, and I think on Thor's part, a bit of that is a bit of cockiness from the conclusion of Devourer King, and in that instance it may be a fair comparison, but aside from that, like in the case of Knull, there's a very short list of characters who are omnipotent, like truly omnipotent in a certain area. So like for Thor, whose power is built upon his father and his uncles, which is a lot of power, talking about realm separating power. But even with that, it's very hard to definitively gauge who can truly do the most damage here. But at a glance, with Knull being the pinnacle of darkness, which is everywhere and on everything that's three-dimensional, which light is being casted on, but to oppose him, in my opinion, it would have to be the pinnacle of light. And honestly, that's not what Thor is. And I feel like even with this, a lot of people will be like, what? Why didn't Thor do this? Why didn't Thor do that? Like, what about his warrior madness? Why didn't he go berserker? And now that the Odin force is with the Thor force, like why didn't he do like Odin and unleash everything like when Odin separated heaven from the 9 realms? And I feel like sure, those arguments could be made, but even still a number of arguments could be made for Knull on how he could have escalated this here and now as well. But here they're just going blow for blow and Knull gets the best of Thor. And I appreciate that with the groundedness of this fight, because at the end of the day, this isn't Dragon Ball Super. Relax. But aside from this, like Dylan tries to help Thor, Knull pushes him away, which then allows Thor to kick Knull and create some space. And with doing this, he winds up Mjolnir and knocks the jaw clean out of Knull's mouth. And I'll tell you right now, like Thor's not the most skilled fighter in the Marvel Universe. He's not the most powerful being in the Marvel Universe. But if you ever had a short list of people who would give everything that they got in the fight and bring some serious damage while doing so, you have got to have Thor on that list. Because in the battlefield, he is a complete savage. But when knocking out Knull's jaw, Knull then awakens the Celestials, which then gets Thor's attention, while Knull then dons the Necro Sword. But while Thor is looking and Reed is trying to get whoever's attention he can to go and attend to the Celestials, and with Thor's back turned, Knull grabs his shoulder and thrusts the Necro Sword through his back. And man, I tell you, this feels like a missing moment in another Donny Cates story, but we'll talk more about that towards the end. But with Thor taken down, immediately Reed Richards is like, okay, we're done. Like, we are losing big gun after big gun, and I'm running out of holsters. But also with Thor going down, you know, the whole island of Krakoa is looking at this like, no good and well what Reed finna say next. But aside from this, you still have the Celestial situation going on. And in that case, we find Tony, who has his Extremis symbiote suit, which he's converted from the symbiote dragon like we've seen before. But with coming in, he tells Reed, like, one, he's not just limited to making it a dragon. Like, he can change the symbiote into anything he wants. But then also, two, when he flies in with the symbiote, bonds it to one of the Celestials, then making it what he would call his favorite new armor. But when this happens, we then see the Ravens like show up over Thor, and the narration from the Traveler comes back. And when he does, he mentions the opposite of Knull, who is the god of light, who is also the source of Dylan's power. but with Knull effectively having the world covered, the God of Light can't get through, but the Traveler, he can. And as it turns out, the Traveler is Silver Surfer Black. And man, I cannot think of another time when a cliffhanger has had my head spinning like this. Because on one hand, I'm like, man, is Silver Surfer gonna use Thor's hammer? Is this gonna tie into Thanos wins? Like, what's gonna happen with Thor? Because technically, he really can't die until he sees that vision where Thanos has Mjolnir and the Infinity Stones. So there's like too many things that can happen. And my head is just spinning thinking about all of it. And on top of that, like, not to mention even like the full reveal of the God of Light and how that connects to the story of Wraith and the Silver Surfer, because there is just so much history like coming back around here. And for anyone who needs to get caught up before we jump back into part 4, I got links below for Silver Surfer Black, Web of Venom, Wraith, and just talks on plenty of the build up that Donny Cates has just been crushing lately heading into this event, which feel like they're gonna pay off in a pretty huge way. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the Patreons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below so you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again in the next one. Alright, later.